Will the Rangers and Astros come back stronger in 2025? How much will the presence of Cole Young impact free agency? And is this the Mariners' last chance to do something with their current core? We'll answer that and more coming up here on Mailbag Monday. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, October 7th, 2024. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're going to be opening up the mailbag like we do here every Monday and answer some of your Mariners questions. But before we get into this week's batch, shout out to our title sponsor today, Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right state can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description. You can sign up for a free 7-day trial. All right, let's kick off Mailbag Monday here with a question from Kip, who wants to know, M's missed an opportunity with a weak AL West this year, but do you think Houston and or Texas comes back stronger next year? Is the window closing, or can a, quote, we're close Mariners team compete?
Well, they certainly can compete, considering they literally just did it. And, you know, not only did they compete with the Rangers and the Astros head to head, they blew them both out of the water. So I think when you look at the rosters, I think Seattle's is just as good, if not better, than those other two. So they definitely missed an opportunity. And, you know, being close to being better than a couple, one bad team and one pretty weak Houston team, not really a consolation prize, considering they lost the division by 4 games. But yeah, I think, you know, is Houston going to be better next year? I don't know. They have some monetary issues that they're going to have to try and work through. They have some pretty big holes on that roster they're going to have to work through. And that's, you know, assuming that they acquire or they retain rather Alex Bregman. They still have those holes. If they lose Bregman, it gets significantly harder for them. Texas is an interesting case because while it's easy to point to, you know, injuries and all of that for them, Adolis Garcia was terrible this year. Jonah Heim was terrible this year. Marcus Semien was terrible at the plate this year. Like, those are 3 huge bats that have massive years for them last year, and were a big part of the reason why they had this super successful offense. And they were all bad this year. So are they? Which is which? Are they these, you know, well above average bats, or are they these poor hitters, these below average hitters? And then what are you going to get out of Corey Seager? Because obviously you're not getting a 2023 style Corey Seager ever again, not for an entire year. Seager was, you know, one of the best players in baseball in 2023. And this last year, he's still good, but he's not an elite player. And now he's been hurt, and there's back issues that we've heard about, and how much longer is he going to be able to play short before he has to move? And they have a lot of other questions too, around their talented team, but they still have a lot of, question marks there, mostly due to performance, not injury. So, and plus they have pitching concerns. They've also spent a ton of money already as well. So how much more do they have to go out and get better and to improve those areas? So I think when I look at Texas and I look at Houston, it basically, the question is like, is this just a one-off where the entire American League West was mediocre at best this year? Or is Texas going to rebound? Is Houston going to rebound? And if they do, how far behind is Seattle? Well, I don't know if Houston's going to rebound. I assume they will, because they always seem to. But I think we might be starting to see Houston go from a perennial, 95 plus win team to maybe an 88 plus win team, somewhere in that range. And then Texas, I don't know, because I didn't think they were going to be very good in 2023. And the offense was just otherworldly for about 4 months. And this year they looked a lot more like I thought they would last year. So I don't really know what to make of Texas, but I would say Texas is somewhat significantly behind Seattle and Houston in terms of the roster builds as they stand right now.
I think they're the biggest variable, though, because, like, all right, what if they do get a healthy Corey Seager? What if Marcus Semien does that thing that he typically does where it's like, oh, it's an odd year, I'm going to be a fringe MVP candidate again? What happens if, Wyatt Langford and Evan Carter are able to take that next step, or Josh Young if he's able to stay healthy. What does a full year of Kumar Rocker look like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of questions with that. Right, there's a lot of questions with this team, and if the answer to most of them is yes, then yeah, I think they're going to be a pretty competitive ball club, and you're going to have to at least deal with them. Maybe not worry about them, but deal with them.
Sure.
And then Houston. I mean, yeah, like you said. We talked about this on Thursday's episode that Dana Brown, their GM, said that they're going to have to get creative with payroll. So what does that look like, right? Are they going to be able to bring Alex Bregman back? Is that going to lead to a tough decision like having to trade Framber Valdez? What are they going to do if Bregman leaves? Are they just going to roll with Shea Whitcomb, or do they have something else in their farm system? Are they going to go out and trade for a third baseman? We know very well how weak the third base market is, especially after you rule out Alex Bregman. So what does that look like? How do they approach that?
The Astros don't have a super deep farm system. They don't have a lot to trade for impact. They just traded two of their best pieces for Yusei Kikuchi, who's also a free agent after this year, now he's a free agent. And by the way, all this is to say that Kyle Tucker is a free agent after next season as well. So they have to deal with that down the road. Houston's got a lot more questions than they have answers right now. But it's Houston, right? Like they're going to develop.
It's Houston, and they still have a great foundation with Jordan and Altuve and Tucker and Pena and Diaz. So they're going to be very, very competitive. They're going to be very strong heading into next year, even if they stand pat, even if they lose Bregman and they do nothing. Right? They're still going to be a pretty darn good team.
Right. I wonder with Houston if we've officially reached the stage where they've gone from great team to good team. And that's just kind of where they're at now for the next couple of years until they can kind of reset everything. But maybe not. Like we said, when the Mariners had a 10-game lead, do not write off Houston ever. Not until they're dead do you write them off. And we don't know when that's going to be.
But from the Mariners' perspective, could you feasibly win the division by winning 89 games next year? Sure.
I guess.
But you should win it by 95. That should be your goal.
Goal should be to win it, to build a team that everybody looks at and says, oh, they can win the World Series.
Yeah. All right. So Jake wants to know, and Jake, obviously from Raise the Triton on YouTube, check out Raise the Trident. Do you think the Mariners will try to land any free agent relievers, or do you think they'll roll with what they have, considering Brash and Santos should be good to go? I don't think they're going to roll with what they have. They shouldn't assume that Brash is ready to go. Yes, he's ahead of schedule, but he's probably not going to be ready for opening day or anywhere close to that.
All-Star break at the earliest.
Yeah, so they have to add at least one reliever, preferably high leverage. And then we talked, last week all about the arbitration eligible guys. How many of those guys are they going to bring back? How many of those guys are they going to tender? Are they going to tender, Trent Thornton at $2.1 million? Are they going to tender Austin Voth at $2.2 million? Are they going to tender JT Chargois and Taylor Saucedo, Gabe Spire, et cetera? So that, depending on what the answer is on those five guys, you have several other holes to potentially address. Look, they haven't given out a significant reliever deal, significant being used generously here. Because they've never really done anything like, how the Astros just did with Josh Hader or anything like that. But
they're never going to do that.
Yeah, they're never going to do that. But like the Juan Nicasios of the world, the Mark Sepchinskis of the world, are they going to do something like that? Well, they haven't in 7 years.
I don't think so.
I think could they do what they did, earlier this year where they signed Ryan Stanek to like a $4 million deal? Sure. Yep. I think at most, though, they're probably giving someone 6, and that's it. And that's like the hard cap.
Right. They probably prefer for that to be 4 plus, incentives and all that stuff. So I think they can do it once. But I think when you look at what they have or what they're going to have in theory heading into spring training, Munoz, Santos, Taylor, Snyder, they're locked in. They're all either making minimum or they have a guaranteed deal. They could always trade one of those guys, but let's just assume for now those 4 are locked in. And then Pizzardo was really, really good in the second half. They clearly like him. He's out of options. He's probably, number 5. So you're going to have 3 spots open. And depending on how many of those guys you bring back, There's five, you have 5 guys locked in, you have 5 guys who are in arbitration. So it's possible that they take, I don't know, Voth, Spire, and Saucedo, and that's the 8. And then they go, you know what, we're okay. And maybe then they take shots on guys like Carlos Vargas, like different, not actually Carlos Vargas, but it's guys similar to that. And they see what happens in spring training. And if they need to move on from one of the guys they thought was going to be a fit, they do that. But I do think that maybe they have room for one, kind of either like mid upper market reliever, $6-7 million, somewhere in that range, or maybe a couple of like $3-4 million relievers. But relief pitching is expensive, and when you have a budget problem like Jerry Dipoto and Hollander almost certainly have this spring, you have to be really careful with how you spend it. So my guess is that they might bring in one Ryan Stanek type,
right,
and that be it. And the name that's out there that makes a lot of sense, Paul Sewald or Eric Swanson, both probably going to make about $3 million, and both coming off of disappointing years, both very familiar with Seattle, and both totally viable middle relief types who do have high leverage experience recently.
Yeah. So, and then the other question that you have to answer here is like, how much better is the guy that I'm getting for $3 to $4 million than Trent Thornton at 2.1?
Yeah.
Austin Voth at 2.2.
Yep.
So, I don't think they're going to go out into free agency and add a bunch of those guys, right? I think it's one probably, and then the rest of the guys that they bring in are via the waiver wire and via the trade market.
If they add a significant reliever, and by that I mean somebody who goes into the high leverage mix, it's going to come via trade. I do think they would do. If they could find another Gregory Santos trade, they would do it. Absolutely, they would. So I think that's, if they bring in like a really good reliever, that's the way they'll do it, via trade. It's not going to come via free agency.
Well, and I think they should, because Brash isn't going to be back.
If you can find
right
it,
away.
sure.
I think the most optimistic outlook on Brash is June, but probably the All-Star break, probably post All-Star break.
And if you're building the team, we're speculating, but if you're actually building it, you should build it in a way where you're expecting 0 pitches thrown by Matt Brash. That is how you have to attack your bullpen this winter.
So we're going to answer more of your questions here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Arena Club. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on Luka Doncic, Ellie De La Cruz, or Patrick Mahomes rookies just isn't in the cards. Now, I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, though, it is now possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I listed was hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent, with a full grade rationale provided and an explanation of how your card was scored. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform you have to check out. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for 10% off your purchase. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. We are firmly in our off-season content slate. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing team awards for the M. So team MVP, Cy Young, all that good stuff. Sports Lover wants to know which players or lack thereof in the minor league system will have the biggest impact on the front office's plan this winter. Will the idea of Cole Young as the opening day second baseman make them want to focus on first base / third base? Will the lack of real rotation depth make them chase an arm, etc.? So I really want to attack the Cole Young portion of this question, because I think it goes hand in hand with the lack of options in general that we've talked about on the market, both at second base and third base. I think if you're the Mariners, this also applies to Josh Rojas a little bit, by the way. I think if you're the Mariners, you have to legitimately ask yourself, like, yeah, there's this veteran second baseman that we think is a safer bet than Young or Bliss or whoever we think is better than Josh Rojas. But how much better is he? And what is the dollar value on that? Like, is he worth the prospect capital? Is the difference worth the prospect capital I would have to trade to acquire him? Right? Because once you get past the first few names, whether it's via trade or via free agency, we're talking about guys that are essentially in that Josh Rojas realm, right? And at that point, it's like, okay, well, do I just want to roll with Rojas? And at that point, is Rojas is the safety and the difference in talent between Rojas and Young and Bliss worth $4.3 million, which is what Rojas is projected to make in arbitration?
The most important question before we move forward on all this, though, is that the Mariners front office and their scouts and the whole team, right, who puts together the ball club, they have to answer this very simple question. What are the odds that Cole Young is ready to be a major leaguer by March 27th of next year?
Right.
Because if you think they're 50-50, you need to have a contingency, like a good one. And maybe that's Josh Rojas.
Maybe that's Ryan Bliss.
Right. If you think it's like 60-40, 70-30, then maybe it's just, hey, you know what? If he just so happens to need a couple, like a month down there, we'll just roll with Ryan Bliss. We'll roll with Dylan Moore. We'll roll with this guy or whatever, and then we'll assess from there. So if you
do you think that you're just signing a bridge, essentially, or are you signing someone that Cole Young is eventually going to complement on the roster?
Right. So, yeah, Young is, I think he's got a good shot to be the opening day second baseman next year. I don't like banking on it, but like you said, because of the lack of options that are out there, you're going to have to take a shot somewhere on this roster.
Yeah.
And to me, second base is the best place to take that shot because you do have, I mean, again, they're not ideal. Ryan Bliss is an everyday second baseman for a month plus is not ideal. Neither is Dylan Moore. Neither is Josh Rojas. So they're not ideal. Mm-hmm. But you can weather that. You can survive that for a little bit. And whereas at third base, there's no third baseman in the system right now. I mean, Cole Young could play third, so it's really second base, third base, whatever. But Cole Young is going to be a second baseman. That's where he's going to end up ultimately. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's the guy who has probably the biggest impact on how the Mariners attack this offseason. It's Cole Young.
Yeah. So again, what is the threshold for determining if you bring in someone or not, right? Is Ahmed Rosario good enough for you to give him $3, $4, $5 million, whatever it's going to cost to sign Ahmed Rosario? Is he worth non-tendering Josh Rojas? Is he worth not putting Ryan Bliss on the roster? Is he worth not just rolling with Cole Young? So we'll see. And again, that, like you said, a lot of that just depends on how confident are they that Cole Young can come up relatively quickly and be good, right? Or at least be serviceable. Right.
Ideally average big league hitter.
Yeah.
At the very least, but even if it's like a 90 WRC plus, okay, that's, you survive with that. I do think Ahmad Rosario would be a nice fit because like you said, he complements Cole Young. If Young is there and he can play every day, no problem. Rosario can still get in the lineup in multiple spots.
Right.
Real fast, the pitching aspect of things, they don't have impact in their system right now. No, probably not. But they do have Hancock. They do have, for now, Evans. They do have Morales. They do have Garcia. Mm-hmm. So while they probably don't have like a mid rotation guy in their system right now, they do have plenty of like filler
back end
type. Yeah, back end. Like they can start for a month and not kill you like Emerson did at the start of this year. So I don't think that their lack of impact starting pitching arms in their system is going to cause them to go out and chase if you can get like a veteran who's been there before and you can get them on a minor league deal and stash them in AAA, like fine, whatever. But no, they're not going to go they're not going to go out there and spend $12 million on a number 6 starter.
All right, so we have a couple more questions of yours to answer here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Booking.com and FanDuel. Explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city during the postseason. Even an Orioles fan or a Guardians fan can have a good time in New York no matter what happens on the diamond this October. You can drown your playoff woes with a New York slice or celebrate advancing to the next round with a delicious chopped cheese, all while taking in the autumn vibes in Manhattan and capping it all off with a great stay in the city. Booking.com delivers exactly the right U.S. stay for you, and the right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, booking.yeah. NFL fans can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. Yeah, you heard that right. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. We're answering your questions here on Mailbag Monday. Last question of the day comes from Ryan, who wants to know, is this the M's last real chance to win with this core of players next season? The Bills are only going to go up for our best players. If the season goes sour, do they blow parts of the team up and begin again? I think essentially what you're asking is, like, is Cal Raleigh going to get traded after this upcoming season, or Logan Gilbert or George Kirby? Mm-hmm. Probably one of the pitchers, right?
Also, by the way, I reject the premise because
here we go.
Salary prices aren't going to go up for your best players. Julio is locked in at 19 for the next 5 years. So, haha, take that.
Clearly, that's who he was talking about.
Yes, yeah. Obviously. I didn't get to use my catchphrase this time, so
right.
I had to shoehorn it in.
We need to get a graphic or something for
counter.
That. Yeah, or a counter or something. We need to get something that pops up when you reject the premise of the question. Yeah.
We should keep track starting next year, January 1 to the end of the year.
Right.
I'm not going to do it, but if somebody out there wants to do it.
So with this current core as currently constructed,
and not to get too in the weeds here, but the core is, I'm assuming we think the core is the same. It's Julio, Cal, Logan, George. Are we going to put Wu and Miller in the core yet?
I think you should.
Okay. So it's those 6 guys. And then everybody else is kind of like JP's, Fringy.
Luis?
What? Castillo? Yeah, but Castillo's this is probably Castillo's last year with the Mariners. So if you think he's part of the core, then yes, this is the last year.
Yeah.
It could be, is my answer to that. But it doesn't have to be. Like, they're not at a point yet where those guys are making so much money they have to move on from one.
Oh, it doesn't have to be. No. But with Logan Gilbert specifically, it's going to be 2 years left on him heading into 2026. So do you want to take advantage of selling one of the top starting pitchers in baseball with 2 years left?
Probably the height of his value is going to be next winter.
Yeah.
Although probably won't be that much lower if you wanted to wait until the summer to do it. But if you're contending, why would you trade
I think he's the biggest variable, because I don't think they're going to trade Cal, and I don't know if they'll trade Kirby with 3 years left. I think they would just wait like they would potentially do here with Logan till he has 2 years left to do it. I guess the other variable here is that John Stanton, we should actually take John Stanton at his word.
No.
Yeah.
The answer is no. Should I trust John Stanton? No.
Yeah, no. That, on free agents is a strategy. And the strategy is because
$200 million on our own guys, but not anybody who might make us better.
Exactly. That's essentially what I'm getting to, is like they are willing to increase payroll to, 180 plus for their own guys. But yeah,
how do you make them your guys if you never bring them in the first? But Yeah, the answer to your question is maybe. It truly is maybe. Cal and George, their first year ARB guys, they're not that expensive, especially relative to what they should be making. So no. Castillo, if you consider him part of the core, I would bet pretty heavily this is his last year in Seattle. Miller and Wu, no shot in the next couple of years, or very, very small shot. But in terms of the second part of your question, like, might they actually do like a mini rebuild? No.
Because even if they trade Gilbert, they're going to get something nice back for Gilbert.
They're going to get a lot back, and it's going to be something that can help them right away or in the following year. So no, I don't think they're going to go through an actual, like, what we would classify as a rebuild for at least 5 or 6 more years. No.
Well, and
now with Julio still in hand.
Well, and at 2026, maybe you've added someone to your core. Maybe Cole Young is a part of your core.
The core can change.
Yeah. Or or at least by 2026, you're starting to talk about, some of your top
Colt
hitting
Emerson,
prospects
Las Montes, Michael Arroyo.
Yeah, now those guys become a factor, and now you're kind of entering the new era of Mariners baseball and the new era of what this core is going to look like, which is still going to be made up by some of the guys that are making up this current core.
Right. I think it's like fine to be like, hey, we have like 6 or 7 core guys, but within that core, we say core a lot. There's like a sub core.
There's like tiers.
3 guys.
There's tiers to it.
Yeah. And so the Mariners
Julio's not going anywhere.
Right. The Mariners have already picked one guy in their onion of core players, right?
Sure.
To be in the middle. Like, he's going to be one of them. I think they're going to pick one of these big 3 to be the second player that they throw into this like borderline untouchable core list. It's Kirby, Gilbert, or Cal. I think one of those guys will join that.
Yeah.
And by that I mean like they'll get an extension.
Yeah.
So yeah, Seattle's got one of those guys that got the extension. He's not going anywhere for a long time. I think they're going to add another one here pretty shortly from one of the other guys in the outer core.
I think they add 2.
You think they're going to get like Cal and Logan done or something like that?
I think they're going to get Cal and Logan done. And I think George is going to get traded in the next couple of years.
And that'll be fascinating because did you pick the right one? Did you pick the wrong one?
Yeah. All right. So that is going to do it for our show. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Tiding Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Tiding Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.